Judge will focus on Oakland police today in connection with
On January 15, 2026, a federal judge in Oakland, California made a ruling that sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers denied OpenAI's motion for summary judgment in the Elon Musk lawsuit, and she did it by citing a single piece of evidence, a private diary, written by OpenAI's own co-founder and president, Greg Brockman. In that diary, entered into evidence as Exhibit 43, Brockman wrote 6 words that may end up being the most expensive sentence in corporate history. Quote, "If 3 months later we're doing B Corp, then it was a lie." He wasn't talking about someone else's lie. He was talking about his own. He was admitting in real time, in his own handwriting, that the leadership of OpenAI was publicly promising to stay a nonprofit while privately planning to go for profit. And now a jury is going to decide whether that lie entitles Elon Musk to up to $134.5 billion in damages. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the private diary entries, the secret 52-page memo, the text messages between Musk and Zuckerberg, and the financial architecture of what might be the largest corporate fraud trial in the history of American technology. The original promise. To understand why this diary matters, you have to understand what OpenAI was supposed to be. On December 8, 2015, OpenAI was incorporated in Delaware as a 501c3 nonprofit. The certificate of incorporation was explicit. The organization's purpose was to, quote, "ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity." It was supposed to operate, quote, "unconstrained by a need to generate financial return." The research was going to be open source. The code would be published. Nobody was going to get rich. The founding team was a who's who of Silicon Valley: Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Ilya Sutskever, Greg Brockman, Andrei Karpathy, and several others. The public announcement touted a billion-dollar funding pledge from a coalition of donors. But here's the financial reality that almost nobody talks about. Court records show that Elon Musk personally contributed approximately $38 million between 2016 and 2020. That represented roughly 60% of OpenAI's total seed funding during its most critical years. Sam Altman, he put in $3.8 million. Greg Brockman reportedly contributed nothing. So the guy who bankrolled the entire operation is now suing the guys who turned it into a for-profit company worth $730 billion. And the question at the center of this trial is simple. Was that pivot always the plan? And did they lie about it from the beginning? The fracture. The first cracks appeared in September of 2017. The founding team had realized that building artificial general intelligence was going to cost billions of dollars in compute power. You can't raise that kind of money through charitable donations. And that realization triggered a vicious power struggle. Elon Musk wanted control. On September 13, 2017, Musk emailed chief scientist Ilya Sutskever and laid out his terms. He wrote, "Board size should be smaller, not larger, and I must unequivocally have initial control of the company." He even went so far as to independently incorporate a public benefit corporation called Open Artificial Intelligence Technologies as a vehicle for the transition. He wanted to be in charge. 1 week later, Sutskever and Brockman fired back. In an email titled "Honest Thoughts," Sutskever wrote to Musk, "The current structure provides you with a path where you end up with unilateral, absolute control over the AGI. During this negotiation, you've shown to us that absolute control is extremely important to you." That same afternoon, Altman emailed Musk and affirmed the rejection, writing simply, "I remain enthusiastic about the nonprofit structure." Musk's response was immediate and final. He wrote, "Discussions are over. To be clear, this is not an ultimatum to accept what was discussed before. That is no longer on the table." He proposed merging OpenAI with Tesla. That was also rejected. In February 2018, Musk resigned from the board entirely. Now, here's the part that matters. At this point, Sam Altman is on the record saying he's enthusiastic about the nonprofit structure. Musk is out. The public message is clear. OpenAI is staying a charity. But what was actually happening behind the scenes? Exhibit 43. This is where the diary comes in. And I want to be precise here because the initial public reporting got an important detail wrong. The diary does not belong to Ilya Sutskever. It belongs to Greg Brockman, the co-founder and president of OpenAI. The court docket confirms it. Exhibit 43 is Brockman's private handwritten journal. The entries were written primarily in November of 2017. That's the exact window right after the negotiations with Musk collapsed. And what Brockman wrote in that journal is devastating. On November 6, 2017, Brockman wrote, "Cannot say that we are committed to the nonprofit. Don't want to say that we're committed. If 3 months later we're doing B Corp, then it was a lie." Think about what he's saying there. He's admitting that the leadership cannot publicly commit to the nonprofit structure because they're already planning to pivot to a for-profit model. And he knows that if they say they're committed and then flip 3 months later, it will be, in his own words, a lie. But it gets worse. Brockman also wrote about the real motivation for pushing Musk out. Quote, "Not feeling so great about all of this. The true answer is that we want him out." And then this entry. "Can't see us turning this into a for-profit without a very nasty fight. I'm just thinking about the office, and we're in the office. And his story will correctly be that we weren't honest with him in the end about still wanting to do the for-profit just without him." Read that last part again. Brockman is predicting, in his own diary, that Musk will eventually accuse them of dishonesty. And he's acknowledging that Musk's version of events will be, quote, "correct." That is a contemporaneous admission by the president of the company that Elon Musk's future fraud claims would be factually accurate. And then there's the money. Brockman wrote, "This is the only chance we have to get out from Elon. Is he the glorious leader that I would pick? Financially, what will take me to $1 billion? He also wrote, "We've been thinking that maybe we should just flip to a for-profit. Making the money for us sounds great and all. That'd be pretty morally bankrupt." So the co-founder of what was supposed to be a charity dedicated to benefiting all of humanity is privately asking himself what path leads to $1 billion personal fortune. And he's simultaneously admitting that flipping to a for-profit would be, in his exact words, morally bankrupt. Judge Gonzalez Rogers cited these exact entries in her January 2026 ruling. She noted that the diary entries could be read to suggest that Brockman intended to deceive, and ruled that the evidence was sufficiently damning to deny OpenAI's motion for summary judgment and send the case to a full jury trial. The 52-page memo, the texts, and the money. But the diary is only one piece of this puzzle, because there's also the matter of Ilya Sutskever's secret 52-page memo. During a nearly 10-hour sworn deposition on October 1, 2025, Sutskever testified that he spent over a year quietly observing Sam Altman's leadership and compiling a dossier. The opening sentence of that memo, which was read directly into the court record, states, "Sam exhibits a consistent pattern of lying, undermining his execs, and pitting his execs against one another." Sutskever testified that Altman would tell different executives conflicting things about product roadmaps and safety protocols, creating informational silos where everyone felt like they were competing against each other instead of collaborating. He accused Altman of deliberately undermining then-CTO Mira Murati while simultaneously pitting Sutskever against research director Jakub Pachaki. And here's a detail that didn't get enough attention. Sutskever used a disappearing email service to transmit the memo to the independent board members. When attorneys asked him why he used self-deleting messages, Sutskever testified, "Because I felt that had he become aware of these discussions, he would just find a way to make them disappear." He literally feared that Altman would fire the board members if he found out about the investigation. That 52-page memo was the basis for the November 2023 board coup. Sutskever, Helen Toner, Tasha McCauley, and Adam D'Angelo voted unanimously to fire Sam Altman. The board's public statement said Altman was not consistently candid in his communications with the board. That language came directly from Sutskever's dossier. And the deposition also revealed that in the immediate aftermath of the firing, the remaining board members initiated merger talks with Anthropic, potentially installing Dario Amodei as the combined entity's CEO. Those talks collapsed within days due to what Sutskever called deep mistrust. Of course, we all know what happened next. Microsoft's Satya Nadella applied enormous pressure. Employees threatened mass resignation. Sutskever recanted his vote. Altman was reinstated. Toner and McCauley were removed from the board. And Sutskever himself resigned from OpenAI in May 2024, followed by Jan Leek, the head of alignment, who publicly stated that, over the past years, safety culture and processes have taken a backseat to shiny products. Now, on top of all of this, there are the Zuckerberg texts. On March 31, 2026, the court unsealed a text exchange between Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Despite years of public feuding, Zuckerberg texted Musk on the evening of February 3, 2025, praising Musk's work at Doge and offering to help. Musk responded with a heart emoji and then immediately asked, "Are you open to the idea of bidding on the OpenAI IP with me and some others?" Zuckerberg replied, "Want to discuss live?" 7 days later, a consortium led by Musk's xAI submitted a $97.4 billion bid to acquire OpenAI's intellectual property. Zuckerberg and Meta ultimately declined to sign the formal letter of intent, but OpenAI's defense team plans to weaponize these texts at trial to argue that Musk's lawsuit isn't about protecting a charity, it's about acquiring a competitor's assets. And then there's the evidence destruction issue. OpenAI filed a motion to compel, accusing Musk and xAI of systematically using auto-deleting encrypted messaging apps like Signal and XChat to destroy evidence relevant to the antitrust aspects of the case. OpenAI's filing called Musk a recidivist spoliator. When xAI was asked via a request for admission whether its officers used disappearing messages that destroyed evidence, xAI responded that they had seen no such messages, which, as OpenAI pointed out, is exactly the point of disappearing messages. The money and what happens next. So let's talk about the financial stakes, because the numbers here are almost incomprehensible. OpenAI's current valuation stands at $730 billion after a historic $110 billion funding round in early 2026. Microsoft holds a 27% equity stake worth roughly $135 billion. SoftBank put in $30 billion. NVIDIA put in $30 billion. Amazon invested $50 billion. And as part of the October 2025 conversion to a public benefit corporation, Sam Altman, who famously held zero equity when this was a nonprofit, was granted a 10% stake. At current valuations, that's worth approximately $30 billion. The man who put in $3.8 million now has a $30 billion paper fortune derived from intellectual property that was originally funded by charitable donations. But here's the thing that should terrify every investor in this company. Despite the $730 billion valuation, OpenAI is burning cash at a rate that has no precedent in corporate history. The company reported $13.1 billion in revenue for 2025, but lost an estimated $9 billion. According to Microsoft's own SEC filings, OpenAI lost $12 billion in a single quarter. Deutsche Bank projects that between 2024 and 2029, OpenAI will generate $345 billion in revenue, but spend $488 billion, resulting in a cumulative negative free cash flow of $143 billion before the company expects to turn cash flow positive. Deutsche Bank analysts noted that no startup in history has operated with losses on anything approaching this scale. Musk is seeking between $79 billion and $134.5 billion in damages. His expert witness, C. Paul Wazan, argues that Musk's $38 million in seed capital represented 60% of OpenAI's early funding, and that this entitles him to a proportional share of the enterprise value. If awarded at the high end, that would represent a 3,500-fold return on his original investment. The judge has been openly skeptical of this damages model, saying on the record that she doesn't find it particularly persuasive. But she refused to strike the expert testimony, noting that doing so would effectively end the trial before it starts. For his part, Musk has publicly stated that any proceeds from a legal victory will be donated to charity. The jury trial is scheduled to begin on April 27, 2026 in Oakland, California. It's expected to run 4 weeks, with testimony from Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, Satya Nadella, and Elon Musk. The DOJ and FTC have filed a joint amicus brief in the case, signaling that federal antitrust regulators are watching this trial very closely, particularly regarding interlocking directorates between OpenAI and Microsoft.